I hate 4x4s for many good reasons. Perhaps I hate 4x4s. They represent to me nearly everything wrong with current trends in motoring. We're supposed to be going green as a planet, and yet people keep wanting to buy bigger and bigger and bigger cars. Vehicles which are worse on fuel than small cars. Vehicles which are less aerodynamically efficient than small cars. Vehicles which don't really even have any more space in them than small cars. Vehicles which aren't actually any safer than small cars, and yet people keep buying them, especially people around here who are intent on driving around with just one person in the car, trying to take up all the spaces they can in Waitrose car park, or on the odd occasion they've got someone else in the car. It's usually little Tarquin, because let's be honest here, what else could safely get your child to the school gates other than a 3-ton miniaturized V16 Panzer? However, every single time I get one of these cars for test, I do wind up falling in love with it. Range Rover Vogue, loved it. The Audi SQ7, loved it. The Jaguar F-Pace SVR, I loved it. And let's be honest here, if you're going to commit to the cause, you may as well go the whole hog. And that's what we've got today. What we have here is Bentley's entry into the ever-growing and fiercely competitive world of the Uber SUV, the Bentayga. That's been in production for about 5 years now and was recently facelifted to bring it in line with the new Continental GT and Flying Spur. This is a stablemate to the Audi SQ7, SQ and RSQ8, the Lamborghini Urus and the Porsche Cayenne. Some of those I have driven, and I'm somewhat apprehensive about this because although on paper it should be a brilliant thing, and indeed just looking at it does kind of make me want one, the Continental GT I thought fell over a little bit because it failed to deliver the ride quality and luxury feel that I would expect from a Bentley. And this car is going to have an even harder time because you could get more or less everything this offers in terms of performance and technology for quite a bit less from any of the other cars sharing this very same platform. So the Bentayga really does have its work cut out. On paper, there are quite a few areas where the Bentayga falls short. Amusingly, in the brochure, Bentley say this car has Supercar Performance, which they define as a 0 to 60 time of 4 seconds and a top speed of 180 miles an hour. Clearly, Bentley hasn't been looking at supercar brochures for the last 25 years. Disappointingly too, the V8 is the meatiest engine that you can get. Yes, I know, if you go on the Bentley website, they'll tell you can buy the Bentley Speed with a W12 in it. Not in Britain, you can't. So you've got to choose between this and the newly introduced hybrid. And is anyone really going to buy a hybrid Bentley? Probably. Let's be honest, they are going to try and fool themselves into thinking that they are somehow saving the planet by buying a slightly less ostentatious, great big enormous 4x4. Also disappointing is the range, 397 miles out of an 85-litre tank. I would want something like this to be able to do at least sort of 450 miles. Just give it a 100-litre tank. Like, who cares by that stage? You're not buying this for its fuel economy. Even if you buy the hybrid, it's still going to drink. This is a fully paid-up member of the 2-ton club. But I don't think they're the kind of numbers Bentley owners are interested in. No, you're probably far more interested in the 63 colours available to you in the off-the-peg colour chart, or the 8 different types of veneer you could have in here, or the 15 different colours you could have for the leather as standard. And if Sir or Madam wants to go crazy, well, Bentley are happy for you to spend just as much as you would like. This 4-litre V8 twin-turbo engine will be familiar to anyone who's driven an Audi product, and although it is a disappointment it doesn't really have quite as much as, say, in the RS6 or RS7, only 550 horsepower here, it does still have the full complement of torque, 770 newton meters, or just over 568 pound-feet. So despite its prodigious curb weight, it still won't be slow, that's for sure. It's certainly a good looking car, and just as well with a starting price of nearly £147,000. The facelift really has worked wonders, and it now genuinely looks more like a Bentley rather than a hastily redone SQ7. But of course, this is a Bentley. Nobody buys it without adding some options, do they? And this car has been provided in what I think is probably a fairly realistic specification. The headline item is what Bentley call the Mulliner driving spec. and I absolutely despise it. Allow me to explain why. What does the Mulliner driving specification get you? Well, it gets you 22-inch alloy wheels, it gets you some quilted leather on the inside, embroidered Bentley logos on the seats, some posh fuel and oil filler caps, and some nicer pedals. Now, call me crazy, but I think the nice fuel filler cap, pedals and oil filler should just be standard on a nearly 150 grand Bentley, as really should the quilted leather. None of this really makes the car drive any better, does it? And this lot will cost you nearly 10,000 quid. I wouldn't bother, but I'm told it's an essential, and I hate that. And you know what's really crazy? Bentley haven't even sent this car out with the 22s on it. These are in fact 21s wearing all-season tyres. And this is the first time I've actually ever seen a manufacturer give out a press car with all seasons on. They suit it quite well, and we'll talk about those more later. And if ever you needed proof that Bentley knew precisely the kind of jungle people would be driving this through was the King's Road, the all-terrain driving specification is another optional extra. £3,610, and that gets you some extra off-road modes. It gets you some underfloor protection to stop you battering the base of the car to pieces, and a luggage management system. Quite pricey, isn't it, really, for a sump guard? Then you have what Bentley call the touring specification, which is mostly a whole host of safety stuff that just kind of annoys me. However, in there you'll also find adaptive cruise, which on a car like this I like, and heads-up display, which I personally find essential, and another thing that really should be standard. One option I do consider an absolute essential is Bentley's Dynamic Ride. £4,000, and it's essentially their version of the 48-volt active anti-roll system that I've seen and experienced on many an Audi. But yet again, I have to question why it's not standard, when something like that can make such a dramatic difference to the way a car rides and drives, and it's a Bentley, for goodness sake. All of that kind of stuff should just be on here. Audi will give it to you as standard for about 50 grand less. And the last two options bring me inside, where we have the 5-seat comfort specification. You can also have this car in 4-seater spec, and that gets you some cooling on the seats and some other niceties, plus million-way adjustment, that sort of thing. Massage function too, which I really love, and the name for Bentley stereo. Like all name stuff, criminally overpriced at £6,660, and I'm shocked Name don't try and charge you another £6,660 for a power supply. Little hi-fi joke there for the hi-fi geeks. However, the overall impression of this interior is marvellous. I love it. The specification of the car, in case you're wondering, the exterior, verdant green, really nice metallic, proper colour for a Bentley, and the interior is Portland and cream. Now, I'm not quite sure if this is green or grey. It seems a little bit of both. The seats, very comfortable, leather, nice and soft. Love the steering wheel, the contrast stitching. Even this walnut veneer, I do rather like. And the impression when you open the door. See, in a Cayenne, you open the door and you do sort of feel like you're in a reskinned Q7. In here, not at all. It does feel like a Bentley. You've got that, oh my word. When I open the door for the first time, yeah, it takes your breath away. Panoramic sunroof, which does open, love that. And that was not on the options list, so I can assume it's standard. Of course, most of the infotainment is essentially reskinned Audi, but that's fine because it's very good. What does bug me though, is the fact that these controls here on the steering wheel, other than the fact you've got a little sort of diamond turned volume control knob, these are exactly the same as you find on an Audi. And I would love to have been at the meeting where they were talking about what they can really afford for the Bentayga, and they said, can we change every single body panel to be our own? Yeah, no problem at all. Pedals and things like that, yeah, no worries. Can we put trees in it? Yeah. Can we put half an acre of deceased bovine in there? Yeah, no problem at all. Oh, how about organ stoppers for the AC vents? Yeah, of course, fine, not a problem. Can we have our own gear lever and stuff like that? Yeah, no trouble at all, anything you like. Oh, could we have our own indicator stalks? And someone at the back would have stood up and gone, your own indicator stalks? Are we made of money? Are you mad, man? Come on. on. Like the gear shift paddles, they're nice, they're metal, although they're still the same sort of tiny, sort of feelless things that Audis are, but they at least do seem to be made nicely. And in a Bentley, I'm not so worried about the gear shift paddles being that big. In an R8, it bothers me a lot. In here, not so much. But yeah, these indicator stalks and the beeping. I know it's a crazy thing, but this car makes Audi beeps. Audi beeps and bongs. Couldn't Bentley have come up with their own? Please? Otherwise though, very nice. Plenty of room up front. Not so bad in the back, although the boot, touch disappointing. Because it does feel quite a bit smaller than I would have expected or hoped for. Now, that's no doubt partly because of the sloping rear of the car, but it feels a lot less capacious than in the Range Rover that I drove. Now, when Bentley send out the specifications for their car, they give me the base price of the car and they give me the price of all the options, but they never add them together. But I've done that, and I can tell you that the list price of this car is just over £181,000. And that puts it in very, very difficult waters, because for £180,000, if you did go to your local Range Rover showroom, you could have pretty much whatever you wanted to. In fact, for 180 grand, you'd have the long wheelbase SV autobiography with back seats that feel like they're out of a first-class jet, with the big fire-breathing supercharged V8 that is a better engine than this. Or if you went to Lamborghini, they'd sell you a Urus, which is a bit quicker than this, for about similar money. Aston Martin would charge you a touch more for the DBX, and I suppose you could argue all day long which is the more desirable brand, because both Bentley and Aston tell me that it's them. Or you could just go to your Porsche dealership and get a Cayenne Turbo SE hybrid, which is much faster and a lot cheaper. So for this kind of money, the Bentley really does need to impress, not just outside your kid's school, but on the road, wherever you are. So let's find out if it does. Now, Supercar Performance, the Bentayga may not have. In fact, its engine bay is one of the most disappointing and embarrassing I've seen in a long time from a so-called performance vehicle. Bentley cheekily in their literature say that this is the first time a luxury brand has ever made an SUV. I think Range Rover and Porsche might have something to say about that, but hey ho. What this car does have though, by the bucket load, is presence. Now, this got dropped off outside my house at about 3:30, and I live just down the road from a school. So this was dumped on my driveway by a gentleman with his co-pilot in a bright orange Conti GT. And in terms of school-run street cred, the Bentayga is a royal flush. I don't mean to sound big-headed, but the other mums on the school run, well, they worship me as some sort of god now. That may all stop when the Bentley goes, but I'm very surprised at quite how many people will stop and stare at this car. It means, I guess, that it's working. This is not something to buy if you're a shrinking violet. If you want to blend in around here, a Range Rover is the way to do it. And indeed, the Range Rover is a perplexing car because, if nothing else, they are plagued by unreliability, yet that just doesn't seem to stop them. Nearly every other kind of car I can think of with reliability issues, it does put a dampener on their sales. Lotus never really could get past it. Maserati always struggled with it. Even Ferrari, who I don't think really deserve it, are always associated with unreliability. Yet, with Range Rover, everyone knows they're terribly unreliable, and yet, in the UK at least, everyone just keeps buying them. You talk to anybody and say, oh, what are you driving? Range Rover. Ah, has it broken? Yeah. What'd you have before that? Range Rover. Did it break? Yeah. What'd you have before that? Range Rover. Did it break? Yeah. What are you going to buy next? Oh, Range Rover. Most people will just want to know, is this car fast? Well, when it decides to get a wriggle on, yes. It's a very familiar sound coming out of it. And you've got, of course, the, wow, look at that. The obligatory driving modes: Sport, Comfort, Custom, and Bentley. Bentley doesn't give you the full sound from the exhaust, but in truth, even when it's in its sportiest setting, there's not a lot to hear. My custom mode currently has everything in sporty except the suspension, which is in comfort. And I've got to say, the one area where the Continental GT really fell over, the ride quality, the Bentayga, I'm so happy to say, really excels. This is a very comfortable car. Now, I'm going to whip it back into Bentley mode. which really does provide a decent balance of everything. And there's a lot to talk about behind the wheel of this car. First off, the wheel itself, very nice to hold, love the two-tone thing, great to look at. Button issues aside, it's very nice, and it's got a pleasing sense of weighting behind it. No, the steering isn't brilliant, but it's reasonably accurate, and there's always just a little bit of heft there to remind you you are in something that is pretty damn chunky. The ride quality is wonderful. It is a little bit floaty, especially when you start to pick up pace, and you can tell that these all-season tyres are a little bit soft and squidgy. There's a little section not too far from mine which I really enjoy, and it's almost like a sort of deliberate moose test, because you flick right, left, and then do the same thing again in quick succession. This did not like that. It really started to get out of shape. But generally speaking, actually, it's been pretty well composed, this car, even over fairly rough tarmac. Much better than the Continental. If the Flying Spur rode like this, I think it would be my pick of the Bentley range. Placing this car on the road, not the easiest. It doesn't help that, like with the F-Pace, because that front end kind of drops away from you, you don't really know where it is. That's one thing I will say for the Range Rover, as infuriating and commonplace as they may be, they are quite nice to drive, and you can put the car exactly where you need it to be on the road. Which makes it all the more frustrating, of course, when I encounter them being driven quite so poorly. Brakes are nice and easy to modulate. This has the standard steels. You can get optional carbon ceramics, which probably cost a fortune. And if you are a really enthusiastic driver, or you're going to take this to Germany quite a lot, I would give some consideration to those, because this is a lot of car with a lot of performance you've got to try and bring to a halt. This has, unlike the Continental GT, an 8-speed automatic gearbox versus the dual clutch. It's very decent, nice and smooth. However, like many modern automatic transmissions paired with turbocharged engines, it's not the easiest to try and get it off the line. If you want to make just an authoritative getaway, you're not being silly, just moving out into traffic, not the easiest to judge. You wind up either going nowhere or just firing yourself down the road like you're at Santa Pod. It is just as well that you are pretty high in this thing, because you take up so much of the road, you need all the visibility that you can get. I am absolutely terrified, I am quite happy to admit, of scratching this beautiful verdant green paintwork. I don't want to have that conversation with Bentley as to why there's a rose bush hanging outside their car. I also am having some considerable difficulty just getting comfortable in this car, and that, I think, is me. That's just me. It's a bit odd. Getting in it also seems to be more of a struggle than it should be. I kind of keep catching my wallet on the steering wheel. It's perhaps a little bit more cramped getting in it than you would think, but not really too worried about that. But it is wafterific. Oh, does it have double glazing? I hope it does. It should do. Yes. Yes, it does. Whew. That was a close call. Oh, it's serene. A wonderful place to be. Heads-up display, absolutely essential. Love it. So this kind of road where this car is totally inappropriate, and that's partly why I've chosen to bring it down here. Also, the road does open up and improve in a little bit. This is a new route I'm trialling. I'm thinking of using this on occasion for sort of hatchbacks and classic cars mostly, because it's quite technical in places, and also very pretty. It's a nice place, and I'm going to try and eye some drive-by spots here. I always try and mix it up a little bit when I'm out and about. I love the clock up here. That's just a beautiful little detail. Really is quite special. There's mood lighting in here, of course, although you can't see it in the daytime. I've currently got it set to purple, which feels about right for a Bentley. Yeah. It does give you the most enormous sense of smug superiority driving this car. It is a wonderful thing. There is lag in the engine, like there is in everything that has this 4-litre twin turbo. It's odd though, in here there's a sensation I've never really felt before. You put your foot down and the car responds pretty quickly, but not with all of its might. And then it almost feels like bi-turbo, in that you get this second hit about, say, 2 seconds after you put your foot down. In other cars that happens, but in a very progressive, smooth way. Here it really is like somebody just kicking the car up the backside. Oh, thank you for coating my lovely Bentley in dust, you fiend. Gear shift's wonderfully smooth. I have done a little bit of time in this in manual mode, and it'll do it absolutely fine. You just click a button and it'll shift, but not especially quickly. I don't really care. In the Continental GT, that'd be a big problem. Here, it's not. The gear lever is lovely in the hand. I don't like the fact that it just returns to where it was, but generally I've got on with this car quite well. The auto hold works really nicely. I like that. This, having the off-road driving pack, does have those extra modes as well, so you can do what you want. You press a button and it'll go up or it'll go down, although I wish there was just a straight and easy button just to get it to raise all the way up. That would be nice. Oh no, there is. Yeah, there is. Ignore me. The Cayenne Turbo S that I drove did surprise me with how comfortable it was, but I think this is just another step more comfortable again. The trade-off, of course, being this just doesn't have the dynamic ability of the Porsche. It's quick, for sure, not quite that quick, and it just can't go around a bend in the same way. But that's correct. That's exactly how this should be. This is what I'd expect from the Bentley, and when Audi and VW Group are trying to prioritize what each version of a car should have, the Bentley has exactly what I'd expect. It's more luxurious inside, it's still very nice to drive. I do just wish that a few more things were included as standard rather than being optional extras. When you're paying an extra premium for the base car, I just think you should be chucking this stuff in. When I was doing my research for this video, I had a look at plenty of old Bentaygas for sale in the classifieds, see what you could get for your money if you wanted to spend a little bit less, and it amazed me just how different looking a car that was, both outside and in. This genuinely feels like a new car, not a facelift. The old interior was just a little bit too much Audi, and the exterior didn't work. This is clearly a vast improvement, and the prices in the classifieds have sort of borne that out, because they don't really seem to have dropped any money yet. Sure, they will at some point. Big 4x4s are a fantastic way to get rid of cash, but for now, prices seem to be holding fairly firm. It's at this kind of speed, like national speed limit, on a difficult road where the Bentley really shines. I've got good visibility, I can see what's coming, it works with the road, soaks up the lumps and bumps, I can feel what's going on beneath me, but it's not upsetting me, and I've got that glorious sense of masses of power available should I press my right foot just a little bit further down. I prefer it when these gearboxes actually choose to hold a gear. I find with multi-speed transmission, especially the modern sort of 7, 8, 9, 10 stuff, there's too much keenness on just changing gear rather than letting the engine work. In a small, 1.6 litre naturally aspirated lump, yes, of course, work the gearbox, but in a great big thing like this with shed loads of torque, there's no need. Just let the engine do its job. When you do decide, though, you need to be over there, the car will do it. So, is the Bentley Bentayga V8 a good car? Yes. Yes, it is. Is it better than the Continental GT? Yeah. Actually, I really think it is. I prefer this to drive. This is what I wanted the Conti GT to be like. But is it worth your money? That's the more difficult question, and it will depend exclusively on what you're looking for. Do you want a performance SUV? In that case, it's probably the wrong car to buy. You're going to get much better value for money if you pop down to your local Porsche centre. Or, to be honest, I'd happily have a Range Rover as well with the supercharged V8 in it and save about 50 grand. But if you want a luxury car that's also going to be reasonably reliable and feel fairly bespoke, Bentley actually does a pretty good job of it, especially if you're happy to do the customization thing and you can build some pretty wacky specs without even having to spend silly money at Bentley. The Aston Martin DBX is a very nice looking thing. I think it's actually even bigger than this though, and yet it still has some very familiar controls in it that I'm not quite sure I could live with. Allegedly, the Mercedes 9-speed gearbox is also not quite brilliant, but I've yet to try it myself to judge. I can say though, with quite some certainty, the Bentayga is going to join that list of cars I'm really going to miss when they get it back. Thank you all for watching. Please like, comment below, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you all for the next one. Bye bye.